Welcome to the Root of It All podcast with Tree, where you will learn new habits for human betterment. We talk about all things related to personal growth, and everything is on the table. Each episode will explore different topics like self-care, mindfulness, goal setting, and more, with a focus on practical tips and actionable advice you can start implementing in your life today. Our goal is to help you become the best version of yourself and live a more meaningful life. So grab a drink, cozy up, take your dog for a walk, or go for a drive. Join us for some fun and meaningful conversations with some amazing humans. Let's grow together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Root of It All podcast with Tree. And today we are joined by Trish, and I'm going to butcher this last name, even though you just told it to me, Tonji. And I'm going to
Tonaj.
So Trish Tonaj, and that's why my name is so easy because I don't forget it. And so, but thank you, thank you, thank you. Now she is a most extraordinary person. And when I met her, we both just connected energetically in a beautiful way. I think we were at a coffee shop and we stayed like over an hour just chatting about all kinds of things. So I'm so excited. She is an author. She is an artist. Her artwork is all over the training center where we have, which is beautiful. And she is also the founder and host of ShareYourStories.online. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you, Tree. I'm really looking forward to meeting the folks in your network.
And I'm looking forward for them learning and growing from all of the wonderful things that you've done.
Thank you.
Just to mention a couple of books that we're going to talk about. One in particular is the mentorship book, which is Breaking Boundaries, right? So let's jump in, and I want to really let people know in terms of the conversation that we had when we had lunch about just this energy thing. Because when it comes to mentorship and mentoring people, it starts from stepping into your own energy first, right? So teach us a little bit about that, of how maybe a process that you do, because it's impossible. We have bad days, right? And so,
For sure.
yeah, so teach us a little bit about that.
I think when you're going to be a mentor, you have to have a symbiotic connection with the mentor-mentee relationship, because I have to be quite honest, I've been in business for over 30 years. And I've learned so many things from customers, from prospects, from networking. And it's because it's a two-way street, right? I mean, we share skills and experience with other people in order for them to share skills and experience with us. So I really think there has to be this, to start with, a symbiotic connection, something, as you mentioned, when we met for coffee, we sat down and started chatting, and it was like we'd known each other for years, and we just talked about all different kinds of topics. And I think that's a really great connection for learning from each other. So if anyone is going to look for a mentor, I think one of the first things you might look for is someone who may be in the place that you would like to be. So if you're trying to expand your business, or if you're trying to change a personal trait or learn a new skill, and you admire someone, or you've met someone that you think really demonstrates that, try to have a cyber connection with them, or a face-to-face meeting, because they're more than likely more than willing to share their life experience with you in order to help.
And there's such richness to that, because even with hypnosis and neurolinguistics, and just to unpack that a little bit, because that is so powerful, what you're talking about in terms of connecting with people of where it is that you want to be. And
Right.
yeah, so in NLP, neurolinguistics, we consider that what we call modeling. So you want to model, or we call rehearse. And actors and actresses do this all the time. If they get a part, they want to find somebody that they can mimic and model to actually step into that role. So
Right.
not only is it learning about the person, the information, how it is that they got there, obviously it's going to be that person's version of it, because we're all very different. But it's also when you meet the person, and you and I have had this discussion before about meet in person, in person,
Yeah.
in person,
Yeah.
in person, if you can. Sometimes it's not available because people are in different countries. But when you meet in person, or even online, you want to start modeling the person's mannerisms, even the catchphrases, right? Like, So when we look at Trish, you are so, every time I see you, you are so well put together, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So if someone were when you're mentoring Trish, you would mimic and model her being put together. Maybe even ask her questions about like, oh, how do you get put together? What are your belief systems? What perhaps got you into it? And it's going to be different. People's put together is different to other people's put together, right?
True.
So it's,
That's so true.
yeah, so it's finding your own version of it. But that is like when I see you, I'm like, wow, you always have, you're always looking beautiful, your makeup, your hair, everything, your outfits are crisp, like and
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, it's and even also too, another great thing that people can model from you is your openness and graciousness to all humans,
Thank you.
right? There's no
Thank you.
judgment there. So teach us a little bit about that. How did, like, you spoke about everybody that we interact with, we're learning from them, we're
Mhm.
growing from them.
Mhm.
Teach us one of the key people that you learned and grew from, and how you modeled them.
Well, that's a really interesting question because in the book, I talk about three different kinds of mentors. One is formal, the other is informal, and the third is inspirational. So I can share with you that my inspirational mentor from when I first started reading books about women in business was actually Coco Chanel.
Oh, I love
And
it.
And the reason why I loved her as a role model or as an inspirational mentor is because she broke so many barriers as an individual, as a human, and as a businesswoman. So I really admired, these are going back to the days when there was no internet. You couldn't Google Coco Chanel. You had to go to the reference library. And I can remember sitting in the reference library, in the biography section on the floor with oodles of books on Chanel and reading everything that I could about her because I just found her life so fascinating. And, there's lots of things controversial things people might be able to say about her. But what you can't deny is that she actually changed the way women present themselves to the world. She gave us an opportunity to go from corsets to knitwear. She changed the look of hats because that was at the time when everybody was wearing hats and gloves, right? She introduced fashion jewelry because before jewelry was only for the rich and wealthy. And she created fashion jewelry. And I mean, you can't go wrong with Chanel No. 5, right? I mean, she was one of the very first women who actually expanded her merchandise selection to include, fragrance. So that for me, she was just the inspiration for so many things that I've done in my life. And the thing now that I'm in the winter of my career, as they say, she actually made a comeback in her career at 70. And
Yeah.
that's to be admired, right? I mean, we're talking about the days when she first started in business, women weren't even allowed to vote.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's just the evolution that we've seen. So for me, what inspired me about her was the tenacity, the resilience, the innovation. That if I can do it, you can do it attitude. And I think I've tried to emulate throughout my 30-year career. People have often dubbed me as a trailblazer because there's a caricature that was done years and years ago of me with a journal in one hand and, an all streets map in the other and a pair of jogging shorts on because, those were the days when we didn't even have cell phones. I mean, I'm really dating myself now, but, when you go back 30 years and you think about it, people don't realize there was no GPS in your car.
Mm-hmm.
You had to use map.
A Bronies map. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For me, it was all streets because I was running around to all different businesses in Southern Ontario. And so that they were one of the first people who had a map that has it was spiral bound. So, you could throw it in the car. You didn't have to unfold it, right? So I think that you just need to find someone that you feel that you're inquisitive about, that you think, wow, I'd like to know a little bit more about that person. And I don't think we do enough of it in today's culture and in our day and age. We don't we're so head down doing the things that we do that sometimes we forget to look up and see some of the wonderful people around us that we can role model or emulate in our own lives.
Yeah, and to that, like, people end up on rabbit holes going down on the internet, and then they'll go from like one mentor or one person they want to model, and then the other, instead of just picking one person and then actually having the experience of taking on their persona. So there's lots of things about Coco Chanel, like even so you obviously modeled even her Christmas, like the way that she
Right.
dresses and the like certain things like that. Even the way that she moves, I can see that you move in a certain way as well, which is so cool. And the interesting thing when we talk about history is that people don't realize that, so anyone that's listening to this, that a lot of women, they couldn't even they had to walk in a separate door to go into a bank. They couldn't write a check. So even lots of businesses back then were run by women, but from the outside looking in, you would never know.
That's so true. That is so true.
Hudson Bay Company, also the same one, was also run by the women, but they couldn't write checks. They couldn't do many things. So when and please send me that picture of you. We'll put it in the show notes. I think that is
Sure.
awesome. I'd love to see
Sure.
that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Well, so from a human behavior perspective, what I want to talk about is tenacity. So it's about going to completion and not letting anything hinder your way, even if there's like a speed bump or a roadblock or anything at all. Because if the expectation is that there isn't going to be any of those things, then that's a bad expectation to have, because guaranteed there's going to be roadblocks and boulders and different things that will always be in the way. And when we talk about tenacity, completing things, powering through, I love the word that you said, being a bulldozer, like just getting there, getting it done, plowing through anything is so important, because what's happening more often than not is that people are ending up in their head too much and getting into this internal debate. So Fitzpearls in hypnosis, they call that top dog, underdog thinking, which means I should do this, but I want to do that. Well, I could do this, but I could do that. And people aren't making a decision. So they're not reaching tenacity. They're not reaching completion because they're talking themselves out of. Sometimes it's self-doubt. Sometimes they're judging themselves or looking at other people and then judging themselves upon what other people are doing. So what I want to point out is the beautiful way of how it is that you looked at Coco Chanel. You didn't look at it and be like, oh, well, all the things that she did, well, I can't do. Right. Whereas a lot of people are stepping into that mindset. Whereas you looked at it and were like, oh my gosh, cool. I can do this too because she did it. And I can do this because, we can do this. And so teach us this two-part question. One, how you kept your mind in the right place. Was there another mentor? Was there certain things that you did? And two, being a mentor, how do you mentor people out of that? Right?
Sure.
Because that's a key component too.
Well, I think that one of the things that I did in my career that I think enabled me to achieve some of the milestones for me personally that I've achieved is visualization. So way back when, before we even had a catchphrase for that, I was visualizing where I wanted to be. And that probably came from reading some of those inspirational books, right? I had a very vivid imagination as a child. And so I would imagine, different situations. And I started to put myself in the place that I wanted to go. So as an example, I really want in my corporate life, which seems so long ago now, and I'm sure that you remember Eaton's, the Tea Eaton Company. So when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a buyer for that company. And the reason being was that my mother had an aunt who was the toy buyer. And at that time, it was regional buying. So she was the toy buyer in the Hamilton, Wentworth area. And I thought, what a cool job. So before long, I started deciding, I was in retail. I sort of grew up in retail. I love meeting people and, helping them with fashion and all of that sort of thing. So it was sort of a natural evolution for me. But I wanted to be a buyer because it combined so many of the things that I loved. And I ended up achieving that goal in my mid-20s, believe it or not. So here I was in my dream job, sitting at my desk 6 months in and looking around and going, geez, is this what this job is all about? Because it's kind of not what I thought it was. So there I was in a position where I'd been striving and striving and striving to achieve something, was able to achieve it. But then when I got there, I thought, oh, geez, this is really not what I thought it was going to be. Now, if I had had an opportunity to find a mentor or to speak with someone who was already in that role, I would have been able to ask all of the questions that I had about what that position was. Because for me, it was very idealistic. I was going to be getting on a plane and going all over the world and buying this and buying that and meeting all kinds of different people. And to a point, I was able to do some of those things. But there was so much more to the job that I wasn't prepared for, that I thought, oh, geez, this is kind of boring. I'm not really enjoying it. So I think if you find a mentor, you kind of cut to the chase, right? You get an opportunity to ask them the questions. So what's it like to do that thing that you do so well? Because generally people are very candid about their experience and they'll tell it like it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because to your point, there's always going to be roadblocks. I mean, I can say in the 33 years or 35 years I've been in business, I've probably changed my business model 7 times. Mm-hmm. And that's because of the people that I was doing business with. They would ask me, oh, Trish, I'm having trouble finding this. Do you think you can do that for me? And of course I would say yes. And then go back to my office and go, oh, how the heck am I going to do that? And before you knew it, you were now offering a new product or service within your business because it was sort of a natural progression for you and where you needed to go. But I also think, if I look back on my life, I can say that everything that I had done along the way has led me to the place where I am now. And that's not really something that when you're in your teens or your 20s and you're going to set the world on fire and you're starting your career, right? It's only when you've been in business for a long period of time that you look back on some of those experiences and think, okay, well, that actually led to that. And then that one led to that. So when you connect the dots. So now when I'm asked to answer the second part of your question, if someone asks me to be a mentor, I think the thing that I want to make sure is that I can actually impart on them the information that they're looking for. I want it to be valid. I want them to be able to get their questions answered in order for them to make the decisions that they need to make to get to where they want to go. Because you're absolutely right. Our journeys are all very different and yet the same. We all go through similar kinds of struggles, but I think the people that we meet along the way help us to achieve those goals.
Oh, 100%. And the great thing about you is that, again, and I mentioned this just earlier on, is you are very non-biased, right? So that you look at it from this sort of big picture point of view,
right.
which is what has made you successful as a mentor, which has made you successful in the things that you did, because you're not so caught up in the fine little details, right? Like,
right.
Some of the people that I've mentored, that they've had, that some of the themes that they've had to grow through is being way too detail oriented. So they've had a really good business position, but they're too hyper focused on, say, somebody's mood or attitude that they're working on it, and instead of keeping an eye on this bigger picture and the outcome, right?
Right.
And so even as a mentor, you're all of those great things and all of the stuff that you mentioned. And I love the stuff that you said about the visual, because we all need to stay visual and picture ourselves in where we want to be, right?
Very true.
Yeah. And when people are being told different things as well, right? We want to check in. So as you're even just listening to Trish, you can hear her tone, you can hear the confidence in her voice. So if you're not watching this, that's fine. If you are watching it, you can see even the facial expressions are congruent with what it is that she's saying. And so from a human behavior perspective, if you're looking for a mentor and you're with somebody and they're not congruent, or they're getting too focused on just one piece, maybe that's not the mentor for you. So you want to pick somebody that it has a lot of diversity, that you're also created a bunch of rapport with, that it was just easy, that you felt comfortable with, and that is in is that this person needs to be in your best interest. So if you get a sense that that person has their own agenda, then you want to step back and just check in with different things. So even asking you, if you are looking for a mentor, really have canned questions for that mentor so that it's a right fit. It's not about getting somebody to, um, it's not about pleasing somebody. It's not about being part of a group. It's about your goals, your dreams, your outcomes. So I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but if 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 you were to suggest maybe three of the top questions that somebody should ask a
Mhm.
mentor to see if they're the right fit, what would
Mhm.
those be?
I think the first one would be, what was your vision?
Mhm.
Because as a business owner, we all have a vision of what it is, whether it's a product or service related, of what connections we're trying to make with our community. So what's your vision? What were you trying to accomplish with your business? And the catchphrase there would be, if it's all about the money, then they're probably not going to be a really good mentor, because money is only one portion of being a successful business owner, as you well know, Tree. You know,
Money's just stored choices. That's it.
it's just it's the result of the effort and the drive, determination, and discipline that we put into being successful. So that would be the first thing I would ask, would be, what is your vision?
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I would ask is, what obstacle did they have to overcome in their career that gave them sort of the confidence to keep going? Because that may be a really interesting component to learn about an individual mentor. It's not something we usually write about. It's not something that's going to be in your bio, but it's something in your heart. So you'll make that connection right away in terms of whether there's that symbiotic relationship when you ask them, what barrier did they have to break? So that would be the second question that I would ask.
And can I just add one thing to that? Because also too, if somebody is hesitant to answer that, then it also means that they're an ego. So it's all about them as opposed to you, which, you and I, we have no ego. It's just, yeah, we're just like whatever needs to happen, right? Like,
No, that's very true. Yeah,
yeah.
that's very
So,
true.
and then
And I also think the third thing that I would ask someone who is going to be a mentor is, if they have taken the time to, obviously it's going to be a scheduled call, we'll call it. So have they taken the time to learn anything about you?
mhm, yeah.
Because if they haven't taken the time to even go to your website to sort of see what your business is all about, then again, the connection may not be as strong and as viable as you would like it to be. So I think those would be the three questions I would ask. What's your vision? What was the vision in your business? What obstacle or barrier did you have to overcome? And have you had an opportunity to take a look at what I do?
Hmm.
And that will really give you a super good indication as to whether or not you've got a great energy exchange with that particular individual.
And also too, if the outcomes align, right? Like, because a lot of people out there, and you can let us know your experience as well, but a lot of people that are in this sort of coaching, so I find the word coach is like everybody's using that word. It's like a buzzword. It's almost too much, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like you have every kind of coach that is out there, which is almost too much. So what I find is that these coaches is that a lot of them, they put themselves in the category of, say, like an empath. And I just actually did another podcast about this. And the cool thing about it is that some people, they just want to save other people. So if you're looking for a mentor and you get a sense that the person is overly eager, or they want to do so much for you, then you want to know that it's enabling you to actually learn what it is that you need to learn.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
so true. Yeah, that's
yeah,
so true. Because you're obviously going to the mentor to learn something, whether it's a leadership skill or a personal skill or a business skill. And so if there's no alignment on one of those three things, then there'll be a miss. You may have a wonderful coffee with them and a wonderful connection and find out a little bit more about who they are as a human, but it may not be the long-term mentor that you may be looking for, that you might meet with once a month, or, depending on the frequency in which you'd like to get together with this individual. Because that's another really important part of mentorship, is being committed to the time, but being respectful of each other's time. So you don't want it to be so frequent that it's we'll call it a coaching experience, but you want it to be frequent enough so that you have some deliverables. There's some action items from your last discussions that you can take forward and starts a new conversation the next time you meet. So that's another really important thing about mentorship, is to be able to share what it is that we're learning. And I think there's a lot of, not just skills and knowledge, but there's a whole personal side to the equation where we're really vulnerable, because we're actually sharing things that maybe other folks might not know in your professional career. So there's got to be that trust and loyalty, and I think respect mutually on both sides for both mentor and mentee.
100%. And when people are taking the information from a mentor, there needs to be actionables. And if you are the person, and vulnerability is there 1,000,000%, because anywhere where there's change, there's vulnerability. And so if you're being mentored and you're trying to grow your business, or you're changing yourself, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. You have to change yourself to grow your business. You have to
Very
grow
true.
yourself to grow your business, right? That's one of the things that I teach all the time, whether it's just even somebody coming into the hypnosis center, or it's somebody I'm coaching. But it's so important. So even in a mentor, you want to make sure that the mentor is also changing and growing, because if they're not, then they're staying stagnant, and it might be time to find another mentor. Or if the mentor is changing and growing along the way, then great. And it is uncomfortable.
For
Change is
sure.
uncomfortable. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so put simply, change happens because and change happens easier when you find the comfort within the discomfort, right?
That's so true.
And it's through experiences. So you can't just go to somebody or go online and talk and chat and imagine. It's the action. So for you, you were awesome at taking those actions. You went into imagery, right? And then took action on it. And the cool thing about getting into that momentum and just doing it, just doing it, just doing it, right?
I
Is
think it's the consistency of your dream too. Like you've got to be really passionate about what it is that you want to do, because without the passion, there's no action.
yeah. And so looking for what that passion is, because even, and you know as well as I do, is that even in any business, yes, you can absolutely love what you do, but there's always going to be pieces of it that you're just like, oh, now I got to do my taxes, right? Like
Right.
it's not like
Right.
there's, or like, oh, at the end of the day, you don't have a cleaning lady for your facility and you have to go around and vacuum and whatever it is. There can
Yep.
be these little tiny elements of things that you don't enjoy as much, but what is it that you can enjoy about it? Like, so for example, in the Burlington Hypnosis Center, it's so busy. So at the end of the night, I have to go through all the client files and update all the notes and stuff. And that's my least favorite thing, because I love being with the people. So in order for me to do that, I will literally blast the music in the clinic. So if anybody is around there at around like 8, 9 p.m. and you just hear loud music coming out of there, you know what's happening. So it's creating the environment in order to do what it is that you need to do. So that helps people move through and getting the actions done. So what are some of the things that you either changed the environment, or maybe changed about yourself to be able for you to actually continue to take the action?
That's a great question, because there's two things that I've done throughout my career. One, and they're both sort of from the self-fulfillment position in order to be able to action in the business. One is taking a walk in the morning Now, that wasn't always possible when I was commuting to Toronto, because I was up at 20 after 5 in the morning and home at 8 at night. And so you're so exhausted, you don't really have time. But what I would do on the train is visualization exercises, so that I was giving on the way in was sort of the rest and relaxation, or the serious time. And then on my way home, I would sleep. Seriously. I mean, it was just such a long day. But now what I do is my inspiration comes from my morning walk. So I try to walk for at least 30 to 40 minutes every morning. It's when my great ideas seem to happen. It's the inspirational time for me. And the other thing that I've always done is taken a break, a mental and physical break from the environment in which you're in. So now I have the luxury of going out, kicking off my shoes and walking in the backyard in the grass, because that grounding exercise does so much for your body, for your mind, for your soul, giving you a little bit of that, that break from whatever it is that you may be doing. And I think sometimes too, when we're at a computer all day, if your business is generally doing things online, you forget the time. And sometimes, you can start first thing in the morning, and before you know it, it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you haven't even picked up your head. You haven't had any lunch. You haven't taken a break. So I actually set the timer on my phone for 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so that if my head's been down and I've been doing something and I'm totally immersed and involved in it, at least my alarm will go off at 3, and I'll go, oh, wow. So I'll have a tea, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll just take a break from whether it's the artwork that I'm doing, or whether it's, doing computer work online for the database and the website, whatever it is that I'm doing. I try to give myself a mental and physical break at least once or twice throughout the day. And I love the grounding. I mean, that's just been a really wonderful experience. I don't know if you've watched the movie Pretty Woman, but Julia Roberts, teaches Richard Gere to take off his shoes and socks and walk in the park. And for me, that was so funny, because I thought, oh my gosh, I've been doing that for years. And I think that movie's like over 25 years old now. So, and I think grounding is now really, and I think the grounding is now really popular, right? Like it's something that people are taught. And I just seem to naturally gravitate to doing that sort of thing in order to take a break. So I think those two things, taking a physical and mental break from whatever it is that you're doing, re-energizes the body and gives you the energy to do something, go back to that particular task, whatever it may be.
Yes, and it's so important that everybody finds their own version of that, whether it's, and I want to go back to the grounding, but first, just everybody listening to this, really be curious right now of what it is. What is your version of walking every morning? And I actually do the same thing. I post pictures online every morning when I walk. And it is, and I'm the same as you, which I know you're shocked. We're very similar in this kind of way, but um, this grounding thing, there's tons of like the science base to it, because there's so many, like think about reflexology, that our feet is connected to every single thing in our body. So when we're bare feet, and sometimes, I don't know if you've ever tried it in the snow, or like in different temperatures of the ground and whatever is the ground. And it literally stimulates different things in the brain. And it's pretty wild. Like just bare feet in on the ground. So even if you have a deck, like that's wood, that's real wood, not like it has to be real, it has to be like nature, like out of real wood. So if it's like cedar or some sort of real wood, and then even rocks, stone, or just grass, even dirt and mud.
And sand too, right?
Yep, sand, the beach, water, like it has to be natural elements that really are us as humans. We are literally just a species on this earth. Literally, that's all we are. So find a natural way for you to connect. So um I've taken up a ton of your time. This went so fast. I can't believe how fast this went. We'll have to have you on again, because I want to talk more about the creativity in your artwork. And I think that's just a whole other podcast when it comes to the ways us as humans step into like this creative side of our brain as opposed to analytical. But is there any last sort of statement or comment that you would like to share with everybody?
I just think that, you know what, step into your own authenticity. Don't be intimidated by other people's success, because your level of success is yours. And I think owning that and celebrating that and really just being comfortable in your own skin is something that you learn. It's something that takes time. And it's really wonderful to have a connection of people that you can rely on, that will call you on your stuff
Yes.
and also help you, achieve some of those goals, because we all get tired out and we all get, disappointed and things like that. But step into your own power, because each and every one of us has a purpose, and you just need to find what that purpose is and then be authentic to yourself as you go on that journey.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're going to have all of Trisha's information on in the show notes and everything, even links to her books. Well, everything's on your website anyways, right? So people
Correct.
can
Yeah.
get copies of all sorts of stuff. So thank you so much for being our guest, and we'll
It
have
was
you
my
on soon.
absolute pleasure. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share the mic with you and introduce myself to the wonderful folks in your network. And if there's anything that I can do to help anyone, by all means, connect through a cyber coffee. We can always meet online.
Beautiful.
Well, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of The Root of It All with Tree. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But before we go, I just wanted to remind you that you can follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram. And we will be posting motivational quotes and behind the scenes content that you won't want to miss. You can always sign up to come live while we're filming this, or even join us online through Zoom. We always offer open question and answer after each episode that we don't record, so it's all private, but you can get more involved. So sign up for free at businessgrowthresults.com, and we're going to cover all kinds of different topics that you're not going to want to miss. And if you're looking for that one-on-one guidance or help, be sure to book a free screening. You can do that at burlingtonhypnosis.ca or call 905-634-4777. And finally, you can catch our podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.